Hello and welcome back to the House of Influence podcast. I am Julie Ann, and today we have Madeleine De Little, and we also have Jennifer Nagel. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we are going to be talking about a book that we will be publishing in November. The title, well, the theme of the book, Jennifer.
The Reciprocity of Therapy.
So we actually have 9 authors, including Jennifer, in the book. And we are talking about the benefits that go both ways when a therapist is in a relationship. And so, Jennifer, do you want to tell us just a little bit about how this book was born? And then we're going to go into a little bit more detail about Madeleine's story.
Well, I think this book was born, from you and I,
Yes.
having a dream and a desire to do a collaborative book. And I really have a passion of working with therapists in supervision, where a lot of the themes are around how our own lives are transformed and changed from the work we do with our clients, the person of the therapist. And I thought, what a brilliant way to bring these stories to life and for the world to know that therapists are human too. Right, Madeleine?
Yes.
Yes.
So Madeleine, tell us a little bit about you and your therapeutic practice that you do.
Right. So my name is Madeleine De Little, and I studied the Satir model, which named after this wonderful woman called Virginia Satir. And I studied it for a number of years, but I was working with children, and I couldn't always apply it to children. It was I needed to adapt it to being playful and literally with toys. And so that's what I did. I spent a few years adapting it to fit so that the Satir model would fit with children. And that's when I started to develop something called Neuroscience and the Satir model in the Sanctuary. And then I incorporated the most relevant science that is around right now into the Satir model, into the Sanctuary. So it's got a great trifecta thing. But now I don't actually work with children. My associates work with children, and I only work with adults. And I'm particularly interested now in my more mature years of working with people with multi-generational trauma. And that's where the sort of the springboard to this chapter came, because I've been traveling up north in the Canadian remote communities in Canada to work with people who are experiencing a great deal of multi-generational trauma. Because talk therapy alone will never get access to these stored experiences that aren't of that individual. They've been handed down through the genetic material to them. So that's like, you can't talk your way out of that stuff. So that's, you do it through images, because that's where it's stored. It's stored in images.
And for me, it's the first time that I had ever heard of using a sandbox and, play characters to actually help the person connect with their bodily experience. And so I was fascinated by that whole concept.
And in addition, might add that I went back to university at the age of 65 and did a PhD. And I was passionate about, rather like Jen said, I was passionate about the personhood of the counselor, of the therapist. Because, like you, Jen, I've been supervising people that I was concerned about, that they hadn't done their own work. And so when you get impacted by our clients, we have to be aware of what's going on for us and what's happening for us and what's triggering for us. And so that's why the supervision is so important as well. So I'm very wrapped up in how therapy impacts us as therapists.
Which is a beautiful segue to your chapter in this book, because you came on retreat here to Puerto Vallarta. There was eight therapists in a room together, and you came here thinking that you were going to tell one story, but you actually ended up telling a different story, didn't you?
Yes, fascinating. I was going to tell a story about my separation, divorce from my husband, and how I did that because of what I learned from the awful conflictual relationships that I've been helping in therapy with parents. And I vowed I would never do that to my children. Well, one of the people in Puerto Vallarta, she started to speak about her own vulnerability, her own shame around her chapter. And it was just like this thunderbolt. It was one of the most profound aha moments where I went, I don't want to write about what I thought I was going to write about. I want to write about my shame around drinking alcohol and coming out of that closet. And it's not something that I have ever shared, really. I know I have never shared it. So there were tears, lots of tears as we were writing it and sharing it. But I am, as a result of it, I'm different. Absolutely. I mean, I was different before writing that, but now I feel like cleansed, if you like, free to.
We heard that, Jennifer, right? From a few people.
We did. And it was so, Madeleine, it was so profoundly moving. I can speak for myself. It was so profoundly moving to witness that vulnerability. Yeah. Which really, and it really did set the tone for the whole, like just the deep, authentic vulnerability that all of us shared with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The week was, if I can just segue into the experience of the week, it was profound. It wasn't therapy, but it was therapeutic. And it was very safe. And I thank you to you, Julie and Jen, for making it safe enough to write the most vulnerable, exposing the most vulnerable parts of us. Yes. Because I think we walk around with, well, we should have our stuff together. We should be able to be better than and higher than, more than, and that's not true. We were all struggling in our own ways. So it was lovely to share that and to say, I'm not alone.
That's beautiful. So what was it about the environment that allowed you to be able to really share that very, it was a very vulnerable and very personal story?
Can't put one finger on it, but it was just coming to your house of influence. That was important. And remember, most of us were strangers. I only knew a couple of people, and maybe that helped because they didn't know who I was, and so it didn't seem to matter. But I don't go to therapy anymore. I go to supervision. This isn't touched on, and I'm not sure why it was. I think it was just one last piece of me that needed to come out into the light.
Yes.
I did a podcast, 13 podcasts on shame. My shame didn't come out in that.
Wow.
So it just felt like
the right time.
I'm done. And it was such a beautiful environment. It was a safe environment. As I say, one person started to be vulnerable and share their vulnerability. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to dive in and do this.
So tell us a little bit about the story, Madeleine, and I'm just going to let you tell the story.
Well, as I've been traveling to a number of remote communities, First Nations communities in Canada, where there is, as I say, multi-generational trauma passed on through the genetic material from early on in terms of the 60s scoop and residential schools and colonialization. And the way that most of my clients up there were dealing with this was through alcohol. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean an occasional glass of wine, I mean a lot of alcohol. Mm-hmm. And and being, I also want to be super respectful to these communities. So I'm going to be careful how I word this, but as a result of the use of this excessive amount of alcohol, there was a lot of harm done to the members of their community, to members of their family, to their loved ones. And I was listening to this, and I was working in the sanctuary, helping these people to exorcise or to transform this painful part of them that they weren't consciously aware of. It's in the body knows, but their conscious left brain didn't know. And I'd listen to them, and I'd watch their stories, and I'd hear them sobbing and crying, and hear the stories of their loved ones that had been harmed, that they had harmed, and who had harmed them. And it was over and over and over again. This is not just isolated incidences. This is rampant amongst these many different communities. And then it was just, there was this moment of, I'm not being truthful here. I'm doing all the right gestures. I'm saying all the right things. But inside of me, I was struggling with the inauthenticity of my drinking. And which began, or my story began when my father was alcoholic. And I vowed early on I would not drink. But I did. And I drank, sometimes I would drink excessively when I was a younger woman, but I continued to drink, and I broke my vow to myself. And I watched my mother being seriously harmed by my father's alcoholism, and my siblings being harmed. I have, I won't go there. And I'd broken my vow. And so it struck me like the shame just was welling up, and I couldn't deal with it. And I decided that I would stop drinking, I couldn't be authentic. I couldn't look them really into their soul. And this is soul work. I could not look at them into their soul and be true to myself. And that's, so January, a year or so ago, dry January came, and my naturopathic doctor said to me, Madeleine, you've got to stop drinking. Let's try dry January. Try it for a month, because I'm a cancer survivor too, and I knew this. I knew that alcohol was a carcinogenic, but I ignored that information. And so then I started dry January and never looked back. Just thought, wow, I can do this.
It's such a beautiful story of being inspired by those that you're helping. So, as you say, you had that awareness of, I can't live with this any longer. I need to change. And I think for this book, all of the stories of all of the people that were here, it was so beautiful to hear your story, and that you were willing, to share this for the first time, very publicly in a book. I mean, that's beautiful.
It's crazy, really. I'm still nervous about it, because I don't want, I feel that people will judge me. But at the same time, I go back there every month. I go back to these communities, and I can hold my head up high.
Yeah.
I know the struggle, and I know that all that back and forth, and the talk that you have within yourself about shouldn't I, and I can really be supportive, and I actually say to people, I don't mind. Please, if you've gone off the wagon, I don't, just come anyway to your next session. I don't need to hear that you've had that you have to lie to me or anything. Please just come, because I know what it's like to struggle, and I know that there's going to be some setbacks.
Yes.
So for all of that, I can be a much more authentic helper.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think that's what we really want to do with this book, is to help people understand that, to take the stigma out of counseling and therapy, to say, you know, we're all human, as you say, we're all human. We feel too, we have emotions, we also have problems. And you know what? You've influenced me, you have helped me to be a better person. And I think that's really the message of this book, is to humanize therapy, right?
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So Madeleine, do you have any last words for people? Anything you'd like to share?
I think as therapists, it behooves us to do our own work continually and to be really, really honest with ourselves.
Yes.
To be, and to find maybe a group of people that are really, that you feel very safe with, that you can share this with. You can share your most vulnerable. And it's ongoing, because we're going to, as we meet new people, different clients and so forth, we're going to, other things are going to come up that perhaps we aren't consciously aware of. So yes, that's the message: ongoing supervision, therapy, being there.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So Madeleine, how do people get hold of you? How can they connect
The
with
best
you?
way is my short version of my website, which is where words cannot reach, or words can't reach, where words can't reach.
Where words can't reach?
.com or .ca?
.com.
.com. Okay.
Where words can't reach .com.
I think it might be .ca.
Well, we're going to put it in the show notes anyway, so we'll confirm it in the show notes. And thanks for your time, Madeleine. And I'm very excited to see you again November the 6th. We have
November the 2nd.
but November the 6th, we're going to have a live book launch.
Very important.
So the online and the live book launch is November the 6th. But Madeleine will, and all the authors will be here November the 2nd, because we will be doing the practice for our TEDx style speech that we will be doing for our live book launch. So I'm very excited to see you then, Madeleine.
I'll be there.
Wonderful.
With my mocktail.
With your mocktail.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.